Months passed, and the Cradle of Stars became a place of peace. Ships from many worlds came to learn from Lila and her crew. They brought gifts, stories, and questions. Lila answered them all with patience and truth. One day, a human admiral arrived, not with orders but with respect. He asked Lila to join the Alliance Council. She agreed, but only if the Vindicator remained free. The Council agreed. They knew now that some things could not be owned. Only honored. Lila returned to Earth for the first time. Since the mission, she walked through the streets not as a hero but as a friend. People smiled, not because she saved them, but because she showed them what they could be. Her crew stayed with her. They built a new school to teach young humans about space, empathy, and courage. They called it the Vindicator Academy. Kale remained with the ship, but now it also lived in a small crystal that Lila wore around her neck, a reminder that even the oldest minds could learn from the youngest hearts. The war relic had awoken under human command, and in the end, it did not bring destruction. It brought a new beginning. The galaxy was safer not because of weapons, but because one human woman chose to believe in something better. And that was the true power of humanity. As the new stars bloomed around them, the Vindicator hummed with a different tone, softer, warmer. The crew stood together on the bridge, watching the birth of a new sky. They had faced the end and chosen life back. On Earth, the Alliance waited in fear. They had lost contact with Lila for days and assumed the worst, but then a signal came through, not from a weapon or a warship, but from a song. Nina had recorded a simple human lullaby played over the ship's comms. The message was clear. The threat was gone. Scientists and leaders argued about what to do next. Some wanted to study the Vindicator, others wanted to thank Lila, but she did not return to Earth right away. She stayed in the silent expanse, now called the Cradle of Stars, helping the new systems form. Kale explained that the Vindicator was no longer just a weapon. It was a guardian of balance, and it needed a human heart to guide it. Lila accepted her role, not as a soldier but as a bridge between old and new, between fear and hope. Her crew stayed with her. They were no longer just salvage workers. They were pioneers of a new age. Mara built new systems that used starlight for power. Zoe mapped safe paths through the cradle, and Nina shared stories with alien species who came to see the miracle. The Xanthari sent a message of peace. They had been controlled by the Devourer's fear, now free. They asked for forgiveness. Lila granted it without hesitation. The galaxy began to change. Humans were no longer seen as weak or young. They were seen as brave, not because they fought, but because they chose kindness in the face of darkness. And the Vindicator sailed on, not as a relic of war, but as a symbol of what humans could do when they led with their hearts. The journey to the silent expanse took weeks. The Vindicator moved through folds in space that no human ship could survive. Inside the ship, time felt strange. Sometimes hours passed like minutes. Other times a second stretched for what felt like days. Lila spent most of her time in the central chamber talking to Kale, learning about the First War. The first ones were not like humans. They were tall beings of light and thought. They built the Vindicator not to destroy but to protect. They fought an enemy that fed on fear and silence, an enemy that erased stars from the sky. In the end, they trapped it in the silent expanse using their own minds as locks. But the lock was breaking, and the Vindicator was the key. When they arrived, the space around them went quiet. No stars, no light, no sound, just endless black. The Vindicator slowed and hovered over a massive structure made of black stone. It looked like a tomblila, and her crew suited up and entered inside. The air was thick and cold. The walls were covered in the same symbols as the ship, but now they pulsed red. A deep hum filled the chamber, and in the center floated a dark shape, shifting and watching. Kale spoke through their comms. That is the Devourer. It is not alive in the way you understand it. It is hunger given. Form. Lila asked, "What do we do?" "You must choose," Kale said. "The first ones sealed it away by sacrificing themselves. You can do the same, or you can try something new." Zoe looked at Lila. "We did not come all this way to." Diamara added, "Maybe there is another way." Nina nodded. "Humans do not just follow old rules, we make new ones." Lila thought hard. She remembered how the Vindicator responded to her. Not because she was strong, but because she cared. She had hope even when things looked dark. She turned to the crew. "I have an idea." They worked fast. Mara rerouted the ship's core energy through the crew's neural links. Zoe synced their heartbeats to the ship's rhythm, and Nina sent out a signal not of fear, but of unity. A message of all the good things humans had done. Love, art, music, kindness. The devourer reacted. It shuddered as if in pain. The red light faded and the dark shape began to break apart. It was not being destroyed, it was being changed. Lila stepped forward and spoke not with words but with feeling. She showed it what it was like to be human, to feel joy, to dream, to help others. The devourer stopped moving. Then it dissolved into soft light that spread through the chamber and out into space. The silent expanse was no longer silent. Stars began to form, new ones, bright and full of life. Kale said softly, "You did what the first ones could not, you healed instead of hid." Lila smiled. "We are human. That is what we do." News of the black ship reached Earth within days. The Terran Alliance sent orders for Lila to bring the vessel to the main fleet base. But she refused. She knew the Alliance would lock it away or worse, try to copy its tech without understanding. Kale warned her that forcing the ship to obey others could break its core systems or worse, wake something inside it that should stay asleep. Instead, Lila and her crew stayed near the edge of human space. They ran tests, learned how the ship worked, and tried to understand Kale. The AI was not like human computers. It spoke in riddles, it remembered things from millions of years ago, and it treated Lila not as an operator but as a commander. Then the Zenthari came. The Zenthari were a species humans had met before small raids on mining colonies. Nothing serious, but now their ships moved in perfect formation. Their weapons burned through shields like paper. They took 3 colonies in 1 week and left no survivors. The Alliance panicked. They begged Lila for help. She agreed, but only on her terms. She would fight. But the Vindicator would remain under her command. Her first mission was to protect a supply station near Alpha Centauri. Zoe tracked the Zenthari fleet from long range. They had 6 warships fast and armed with plasma cannons. Lila studied the data, then smiled. She had a plan. The Vindicator did not fly like normal ships. It bent space around itself. It could appear behind an enemy before they saw it coming. Lila ordered the ship to jump. They vanished from their position and reappeared right in the middle of the Zenthari formation. The enemy ships fired, but their shots passed through empty space. The Vindicator was already gone. It reappeared above them and released a pulse of dark energy. The Zenthari shields flickered and died one by one. Their ships fell silent in less than 10 minutes. It was over. No human lives. Lost no damage to the station. The Zenthari fleet was gone. Back at command, the admirals were stunned. They asked how she did it. Lila just said the ship knows what to do. But that battle changed something inside the Vindicator, deep in its core. A new signal began to pulse. A countdown started, Kale told Lila. It was a failsafe from the First War. The ship was heading toward a place called the Silent Expanse, a dead zone where no signals returned. Why now? Lila asked. Because the enemy has returned. Kyle said the Zenthari were not the real threat. They were just scouts. The true danger is waking up, and it knows the Vindicator is active. Lila gathered her crew. She told them the truth. They could leave if they wanted, but all of them stayed. Mara said, "Someone has to keep the engines running." Zoe said, "Someone has to watch her back." And Nina said, "Someone has to make sure the galaxy hears what they do." They set course for the Silent Expanse, not knowing what waited there, but knowing they could not turn back. The war relic had chosen them, and now they had to finish what the first ones started. Far out in the cold dark of space where no human had gone before the salvage ship, Aurora Dawn moved slowly through a field of broken metal and frozen rock. This place was once a battlefield, but now it was just a graveyard of old wars and forgotten ships. The crew of the Aurora Dawn did not come here for glory. They came for scrap metal and old tech that could be sold back home. Captain Lila Grant stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the scanner screen. A small blip had appeared deep inside. A chunk of ice. It was not moving, but it gave off a strange energy reading. Unlike anything in the database, she called her team together. Engineer Mara Lynn, Tactical Officer Zoe Bell, and comms expert Nina Patel. They gathered around the screen, watching. The signal pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "We should check it out," Lila said, her voice calm but firm. Mara shook her head. "We are already low on fuel and this zone is unstable." But Zoe pointed at the screen. "That signal is not natural. It is too regular, too clean." After a short debate, they suited up and took a shuttle to the ice field. The cold bit through their suits as they drilled into the frozen mass inside. They found something black, smooth and huge. It was a ship, but not like any human or known alien ship. It had no visible engines, no windows, no weapons ports, just smooth curves and strange symbols that glowed faintly when touched. Lila felt a pull toward it. Something deep in her chest told her to go closer. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the surface. The moment she did, the whole ship lit up. Soft blue light ran along its hull and a low hum filled the air. The ground shook slightly and a door opened in the side of the ship. Inside, the air was warm and clean. The walls glowed with soft light and the floor felt alive under their feet. They moved carefully through the corridors until they reached a large round room. In the center stood a tall crystal console. Lila walked to it without thinking. She placed both hands on the surface. A voice spoke, not from speakers but inside their heads. It was calm, deep and clear. Commander acknowledged systems initializing. The crew froze. Mara whispered, "What did it just call?" Lila felt a rush of images in her mind. Stars exploding, planets burning, a war so big it swallowed galaxies, and then silence. She pulled her hands back, gasping, but the ship did not stop. It powered up, more lights came on, and the hum grew stronger. Back on the Aurora Dawn, the ship began to move on its own. It lifted from the ice with no sound and floated beside their shuttle. The crew returned quickly and watched in awe as the black ship matched their speed and waited. When they got back to the nearest station, news of the find spread fast. Scientists wanted to study it. Admirals wanted to control it, but the ship would not respond to anyone but Lila. It ignored all commands unless she gave them. It even refused to power down when ordered. The station commander demanded she hand it over, but Lila said no. This ship chose her and she would not let it be taken apart like scrap metal. That night she returned to the black ship alone. She walked to the central room and spoke to the air. "Who are you?" The voice came again. "I am Kale, last guardian of the first ones. This vessel is the Vindicator. It was built to end a war that never truly ended." Lila asked, "What war?" The silence that followed felt heavy. Then Kale said, "The war against the end of all things." She did not understand, but she felt the truth. In those words, something old and dangerous was waking up, and for reasons she could not explain, the Vindicator believed she was the one to face it. As she stood there, the ship wrapped her in warmth like a promise. It was no longer just a relic, it was hers and she was its. The Aurora Dawn crew watched from a distance. None of them knew what would happen next, but they all knew one thing. Their simple salvage run had just changed everything. The war relic had awoken and it now answered to a human voice.